It is really important, I think, that people who are dyslexic and then have had successful careers because they've been given the support they need, we've got to be cognizant that, we're the ones who made it through. There are many people with dyslexia who don't get that support.
Hi, I'm Julian. I'm the Chief Executive of the British Dyslexia Association. I'm here with Matt Hancock MP to talk about the bill that you've raised in Parliament yesterday on screeners. So you've introduced a bill talking about universal dyslexia screening in primary schools. Can you say why this is important to you and why now?
Well, yesterday I was delighted that the House of Commons unanimously supported the proposal of bringing forward this bill. And the bill is about universal screening for dyslexia, but we know that screening only works when you have both the technology available and the teachers to be able to then identify need, and of course then to rise to the challenge of teaching people according to how their minds work. It's an urgent problem because we estimate, it's hard to know exactly, but we estimate that only 1 in 5 children get identified if they have dyslexia in the entirety of their school years. And resolving that and making sure people are therefore taught according to how their minds are wired is absolutely critical to helping people to achieve their potential.
Yes, definitely. We know it's really important for teachers to have as much information about pupils as they possibly can. So one of the things that a screener does is give that information about pupil strengths and weaknesses. How do you think a screener can gather this information?
Well, screening on its own is not the whole answer, because teachers are so central. But if you use modern technology, screeners can increasingly give indications to teachers that can then be interpreted so that people can be taught according to the way they think. And we know that people with dyslexia think differently, and that is both a blessing, but it also raises challenges. And you see, the thing I feel so strongly about is that in the modern world of work, the sorts of skills that dyslexic people tend to be best at, creativity, lateral thinking, empathy, these are the skills that the modern world of work needs most and increasingly needs. And I just hark back to my own experience when my dyslexia was only identified at university. And since I've started speaking about that and speaking about it around the bill and what we did in the House of Commons yesterday, the amount of people who've come to me and said, yeah, I only got identified, sometimes at A level. I only got identified at university. I didn't get identified until I'd gone into the workplace, and sometimes had a really tough time at school because they hadn't been identified all the way through school. And we know the problems that can cause as well.
Yes, you're so right. I mean, the screener really does give us some good information. And I think what was so great about your speech yesterday, and I watched you speak, is that you spoke about your own strengths and you were able to identify that with your own dyslexia. And that's really encouraging. What do you think, though, when we think about screeners and the data that it's collecting? That's only really the first step. How do you think that the data is going to be translated into action for our pupils in schools?
I think it's a critical question, how we translate the data that's picked up from screeners and use that. And that most immediately, of course, it will assist a teacher to be able to teach according to the needs of an individual child, how their mind works. It's also about making sure that children, by naming their dyslexia, if they're dyslexic, don't feel underconfident, because so many people are just told that they're not very good at reading and writing. But there are ways around that. There are ways to support people to learn with dyslexia and with a dyslexic brain, and that applies to other neurodiversities too, of course. And then there's a constant piece of work we need to do, which has come on leaps and bounds in the last couple of decades, which is how do you teach people who are dyslexic? There's a spectrum, of course. Dyslexic people often have a spiky profile, can be very, very good at some things, and very low performing in other areas. And so the screening results for an individual child are important, but so too are the lessons in terms of how we teach. And the amount of materials available for how to teach people with dyslexia is very large now. And the amount of, for instance, multisensory tools that are available. But making sure we use the data properly for the individual, for the school, and for research purposes is all, to my mind, critical.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I was listening to you yesterday when you were speaking in Parliament, and what really spoke to me was when you discussed that link between schools and prisons. And we know for our prison population, there is a lot of diagnosed dyslexia or undiagnosed dyslexia because they haven't been able to access an assessment. One of the things, though, around our prison education system is, and this is where it becomes really interesting, is that they don't really have access to the technology which we know would support their dyslexia. So how do you think we can support prisoners to access that assistance within the education system in our prison system?
Well, I understand why it's harder to have technology in a prison setting, and it's making sure that people can't carry on their criminal activities inside prison is, of course, a critical part of the criminal justice system. Nevertheless, there are now systems available to get technology in a secure way into prisons. In the prison in my constituency, in High Point Prison, it's one of the largest teaching prisons in the country. There they have a small amount of assistive technology to help with literacy. And I know that it has a positive impact from talking to the staff there and some of the prisoner mentors who help other prisoners to learn to read and write, because often they have unidentified dyslexia. So it is a really important topic. And, you know, it comes back also, though, to school, because if you can get this right from the start, as opposed to have to take the remedial action, then, of course, we're helping to break the link from dyslexia to the prison door, as I put it in House of Commons yesterday. You know, it is really important, I think, that people who are dyslexic and then have had successful careers because they've been given the support they need or they've found ways around their dyslexia, we've got to be cognizant that, you know, we're the ones who made it through. There are many people with dyslexia who don't get that support, and you know the fact that it can go either way is really stark, and that should motivate us all to do more on this agenda and to make sure that everybody who has dyslexia is identified before they leave school. That has got to be our goal.
Yes, you've got no arguments from me with that one. And just to finish off, one of the things that we know at the British Dyslexia Association is the value of a specialist teacher. We know that they have that knowledge to devise and implement evidence-based interventions, and that's so crucial. We know that a screener does not diagnose dyslexia, but would you support teachers, a specialist teacher in all schools, to take the screening results and turn them into evidence-based interventions for our pupils?
Yes, I do. And I called for this in the House of Commons yesterday. It's not the sort of thing that you can easily put into law. It's a matter of getting on with it. And I look forward to raising this with Nadeem Zahawi when I meet him. And it's not just about the SENCO, the Special Educational Needs Coordinator, you know, because every teacher is a teacher of dyslexic kids. You know, that's just the nature of teaching. And the fact that there are anywhere between 1 in 10 or even up to 1 in 5 people who are dyslexic, so we've got to make sure it gets into core teacher training as well as having the properly trained SENCO. So these are things that I would be pushing the government to put in place. I hope to see them in the government SEN reforms that they're coming forward with. So that's something else that we should be pushing alongside this, the bill on the screening, which is all really about identification, so that everybody knows, the pupil, the parent, and the teachers know who is dyslexic, and so people can be taught according to how their minds work.
Matt, thank you for your time this afternoon, and thank you for sharing your own experience. It's really valuable to people with dyslexia that they see that there is hope, and they see that in somebody like yourself in the public eye. And it's really important also that they recognise that we're fighting for them, and that's really crucial. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for all your work on this and your support for me as I'm trying to drive this agenda here in the House of Commons.